Maya was a 12-year-old girl who lived in a small fishing village by the sea, and she had always dreamed of adventure beyond the quiet life she knew every single day of her young life. Her father was a fisherman who went out on his boat every morning before the sun came up, and her mother sold fish at the market in the center of their little town where everyone knew everyone else by name and by face and by the stories they told about their families going back many generations into the past. One evening, while Maya was helping her grandmother clean the old storage room behind their house, she found something very strange hidden inside a wooden box that was covered in dust and spider webs and looked like nobody had touched it for many, many years. Inside the box, there was an old map made of thick yellow paper that felt rough and dry under her fingers. And the map showed an island that Maya had never seen or heard about in all her years of living by the ocean and listening to the sailors tell their tales. "Grandmother, what is this map?" Maya asked with excitement in her voice and curiosity burning in her heart, like a small fire that wanted to grow bigger and bigger. Her grandmother looked at the map and her eyes grew wide with surprise and something else that Maya could not understand at first. But then she realized it was fear mixed with wonder and old memories coming back to life after being asleep for so long. "This belonged to your great-grandfather, child," the old woman said in a soft voice that trembled like leaves in a gentle wind. "He was a famous explorer who traveled to places that most people believed did not exist. And this map shows the location of the hidden island." Maya felt her heart beat faster and faster as she listened to her grandmother speak about things she had never known before, secrets that had been kept from her for her entire life until this very moment in the dusty storage room. The hidden island, her grandmother explained, was a place of mystery and magic where strange creatures lived and ancient treasures waited to be discovered by someone brave enough to make the journey across the dangerous waters that surrounded it like a protective wall. "But why did no one ever tell me about this before?" Maya asked, feeling a little bit hurt that such an important family secret had been hidden from her for so many years without any explanation. Her grandmother sat down on an old chair and began to tell Maya the whole story from the very beginning. And Maya listened with her mouth open and her eyes shining with wonder and disbelief and excitement all mixed together. Many years ago, her great-grandfather had discovered the hidden island during one of his long voyages across the ocean. And he had found things there that changed his life forever and made him see the world in a completely different way than before on the island. There were plants that glowed in the dark like tiny stars falling from the sky. And there were birds with feathers of every color imaginable that could sing songs so beautiful they made people cry tears of joy. And there were trees so tall they seemed to touch the clouds above. But the most amazing thing of all was the treasure he found in a cave at the center of the island. A treasure not made of gold or silver or precious gems, but something far more valuable and powerful that he never told anyone about. Not even his own wife and children. "What was the treasure, grandmother?" Maya asked, her voice barely louder than a whisper because she was so caught up in the story that she forgot to speak in her normal voice. But her grandmother shook her head slowly from side to side and said she did not know, because her father had taken that secret to his grave without ever revealing it to another living soul on this earth. All she knew was that the treasure had the power to change the world, and that her father had decided it was too dangerous to share with others who might use it for bad purposes instead of good ones. Maya looked at the map again, studying every line and every symbol and every little mark that her great-grandfather had drawn with his own hand so many years ago when he was alive and young and full of adventure. She could see the route across the ocean marked with arrows, and she could see the shape of the island with its mountains and forests and rivers and the cave where the mysterious treasure was hidden away from the rest of the world at that moment. Maya made a decision that would change her life forever and take her on the greatest adventure she could ever imagine. An adventure full of danger and wonder and discoveries that would test her courage and her cleverness in ways she could not predict. She decided that she would find the hidden island and discover the secret treasure that her great-grandfather had left behind. And nothing and nobody would stop her from achieving this goal, no matter what obstacles stood in her way. But she knew she could not do it alone because the journey was too long and too dangerous for one young girl to attempt by herself without any help or support from others who could assist her. She needed to find friends who would be willing to join her on this incredible quest. Friends who were brave and smart and loyal and who believed in the power of adventure and discovery just as much as she did. The next morning, Maya woke up before the sun rose over the horizon and painted the sky with shades of orange and pink and gold that reflected on the calm surface of the sea like a beautiful painting. She put the map carefully inside her bag and set out to find the people who would become her companions on the journey to the hidden island. The journey that would reveal the greatest secret her family had ever kept. Her first stop was the house of her best friend, a boy named Leo, who was the same age as Maya, and who had always shared her love of adventure and exploration and dreaming about faraway places they had never seen. Leo was already awake when Maya arrived at his door because he was the kind of person who found it hard to sleep when there were so many interesting things in the world to think about and wonder about and imagine. "Leo, I have something amazing to show you," Maya said with a huge smile on her face that told Leo this was something truly special and not just an ordinary morning visit from his best friend. She pulled out the map and spread it on the table in front of him. Watching his face change from confusion to curiosity to pure excitement as he realized what he was looking at and what it meant for both of them. "Is this real?" Leo asked in a voice full of disbelief and hope, touching the old paper gently as if it might disappear like a dream. If he was not careful enough with it, Maya told him everything her grandmother had told her about the hidden island and the treasure and her great-grandfather, the explorer. And Leo listened without saying a single word because he was too amazed to speak when she finished her story. Leo looked at her with determination in his eyes and said the words she had been hoping to hear ever since she woke up that morning with a plan in her heart. "I will go with you to find this island, Maya," he said. "This is the adventure we have been waiting for our whole lives, and we cannot let this chance slip away from us." Maya felt happiness and relief wash over her like a warm wave on a summer day, and she knew that with Leo by her side, she had a much better chance of succeeding in her quest to find the hidden island and its mysterious treasure. But they both knew they needed more help because the journey would require skills and knowledge that neither of them possessed on their own. No matter how brave and determined they might be, they decided to visit the old lighthouse keeper named Samuel, a man who had sailed the seas for 50 years and knew more about navigation and ocean currents and weather patterns than anyone else in the entire village. Samuel was a tall man with a long, white beard and kind eyes that had seen many wonderful and terrible things during his long life on the water. And he welcomed Maya and Leo into his lighthouse home with a warm smile when they showed him the map and told him their plan. The old sailor studied the paper for a long time without saying anything, his face unreadable and his thoughts hidden behind his weathered expression. Finally, he looked up at the two young adventurers standing before him and said something that surprised them both and made their hearts fill with hope and excitement for the journey ahead. "I know this island," Samuel said in his deep voice that sounded like the rumble of distant thunder over the ocean. "I have heard stories about it my entire life, and I always wondered if it truly existed." He told them that he would help them prepare for the journey and teach them everything they needed to know about sailing and surviving on the open sea. where dangers lurked in every direction. Maya and Leo looked at each other with joy and gratitude shining in their eyes, knowing that their adventure was about to begin and that nothing would ever be the same again after they set sail for the hidden island. For the next 2 weeks, Maya and Leo spent every single day at the lighthouse with Samuel, learning everything the old sailor could teach them about life on the ocean and the skills they would need to survive their dangerous journey. Samuel taught them how to read the stars at night so they would never lose their way even when the sky was dark and the moon was hidden behind thick clouds that blocked all light from above. He taught them how to tie strong knots that would hold their boat together during the worst storms. And he showed them how to catch fish and collect rainwater and find their direction using only the position of the sun. Maya discovered that she had a natural talent for navigation, and she could look at the map and the sky and know exactly where they were and where they needed to go with amazing accuracy that impressed even Samuel himself. Leo was very good at fixing things and building things with his hands, and he spent many hours repairing an old boat that Samuel had kept in a shed behind the lighthouse for many years without ever using it. The boat was called the Sea Sparrow, and it was small but strong and perfect for 3 people to sail across the ocean to find an island that most people believed was only a legend and nothing more. This boat will carry you safely to your destination if you treat her with respect and care, Samuel told them one evening as they sat on the dock watching the sunset paint the water in shades of red and orange. But there was one more person who wanted to join their adventure, a person who surprised everyone when she appeared at the lighthouse one morning with a bag packed and a determined look on her face. Her name was Rosa, and she was Leo's older sister, who was 15 years old and known throughout the village for being the smartest person in her class and maybe even the smartest person in the whole town. "I know what you are planning," Rosa said to Maya and Leo with her arms crossed over her chest and her eyes narrowed in a way that told them she was not going to take no for an answer. She had found out about their secret plan by reading Leo's journal, where he had written everything down. And instead of telling their parents or trying to stop them, she decided she wanted to come along. "I can help you," Rosa said, pulling out a notebook filled with drawings and notes and calculations that she had been working on ever since she discovered their secret. "I have been studying the currents and the weather patterns, and I know the best time to make this journey." Maya looked at Leo and then at Rosa, and she realized that having someone as smart and capable as Rosa on their team would only increase their chances of success on this dangerous adventure. "Welcome to the crew," Maya said with a smile. And Rosa smiled back and shook her hand firmly like they were making a business deal instead of becoming partners in the greatest adventure of their lives. Samuel was happy to have another crew member, especially one who was so intelligent and prepared. And he spent extra time teaching Rosa about sailing and navigation so she would be ready for what lay ahead. The day of departure finally arrived on a bright morning when the sky was clear and blue and the wind was blowing gently from the west in exactly the direction they needed to go. Maya woke up before dawn and said goodbye to her parents, telling them she was going on a camping trip with her friends for a few days. A small lie that made her feel guilty, but seemed necessary to protect them from worry. Her grandmother was the only person who knew the truth about where Maya was really going. And the old woman hugged her granddaughter tightly and whispered words of encouragement and love in her ear. "Be brave, my child, and remember that your great-grandfather is watching over you from wherever he is now," her grandmother said with tears in her eyes that sparkled like diamonds in the early morning light. Leo and Rosa had also said goodbye to their family, telling them the same story about a camping trip. And they met Maya at the lighthouse where Samuel and the Sea Sparrow were waiting for them. The old sailor had prepared everything they would need for the journey, including food and water and ropes and tools and a special compass that had belonged to his own father, who had also been a sailor many years ago. This compass will always show you the right direction no matter how lost you feel, Samuel said as he handed the precious instrument to Maya. With great ceremony and care, Maya took the compass and felt its weight in her hand, understanding that this was more than just a navigation tool, but also a symbol of trust and responsibility that she had to carry with her on this journey. They loaded their supplies onto the boat and checked everything twice to make sure nothing was missing or broken or in the wrong place, because one small mistake could mean disaster on the open ocean. When everything was ready, they climbed aboard to sea. Sparrow and Samuel untied the ropes that held them to the dock, while Maya and Leo raised the sail that would catch the wind and carry them toward adventure. Rosa took her position at the front of the boat, where she could watch for obstacles and other ships and anything else that might appear in their path as they sailed away from their home. The wind filled the sail and the boat began to move, slowly at first and then faster and faster, until the village behind them grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely from view. Maya felt a mixture of fear and excitement as she watched her home fade into the distance, knowing that she was leaving behind everything familiar and safe for a journey into the unknown. For the first 3 days, the voyage went smoothly with good weather and calm seas and steady winds that pushed them in the right direction. According to the map and the compass, they took turns steering the boat and keeping watch and cooking simple meals and telling stories to pass the time and keep their spirits high during the long hours of sailing. Leo told funny stories that made everyone laugh until their stomachs hurt, and Rosa shared interesting facts about the ocean and its creatures that she had learned from books in the village library. Maya told them about her great-grandfather and his adventures, making up some details that she did not actually know, but that seemed to fit the kind of man he must have been based on what her grandmother had told her. At night, they slept in the small cabin below the deck, while one person always stayed awake to watch for danger and make sure the boat stayed on course through the dark hours. On the 4th day, everything changed when the sky grew dark with thick black clouds that rolled toward them from the east, like an army of angry giants coming to destroy everything in their path. Samuel had warned them about storms and told them what to do if they encountered one, but nothing could have truly prepared them for the terror of facing a real storm on the open ocean. The wind grew stronger and stronger until it was screaming in their ears like a wild animal, and the waves grew taller and taller until they towered over the little boat like mountains of water. "Hold on tight and do not let go," Maya shouted to her friends as they grabbed ropes and rails and anything else they could find to keep themselves from being thrown into the angry sea. Rain poured down from the sky so hard that they could barely see each other even though they were only a few feet apart, and thunder crashed and lightning flashed all around them like explosions. The sea sparrow was tossed up and down and left and right like a toy in the hands of an angry giant, and for many terrifying hours they could do nothing but hold on and pray for survival. Rosa was crying with fear, but she did not let go of the rope she was holding, and Leo was shouting words of encouragement that nobody could hear over the roar of the storm. Maya thought about her grandmother and her parents and everyone she loved back home, and she wondered if she would ever see them again or if the ocean would swallow her up forever. But she refused to give up hope, because that was not the kind of person she was, and she knew that somewhere out there the hidden island was waiting for her to find it. Just when it seemed like the storm would never end and they would be lost forever in the chaos of wind and water and darkness, the clouds began to break apart and the rain began to slow down. Wind died down to a gentle breeze, and the waves grew smaller and calmer until the ocean looked almost peaceful again, as if the terrible storm had never happened at all. They were all soaking wet and exhausted and terrified, But they were alive, and the boat was still floating, and that was all that mattered in that wonderful moment of relief and gratitude. "We survived," Leo said in a voice that was barely louder than a whisper, as if he could not quite believe the words he was speaking were. True Rosa hugged her brother tightly, and Maya joined them in a group embrace that said more than any words could express about what they had just been through together. When they finally separated and looked around at the ocean that stretched endlessly in every direction, Maya noticed something on the horizon that made her heart leap with joy and excitement in the distance. She could see the outline of land rising up from the water, an island with tall mountains and green forests that looked exactly like the drawing on her great-grandfather's map. "There it is," Maya said, pointing toward the island with a trembling finger and tears of happiness streaming down her face. "The hidden island." The three young adventurers sailed toward the island with renewed energy and excitement, forgetting for a moment all the fear and exhaustion from the terrible storm they had just survived. As they got closer, they could see more and more details of this mysterious place that had existed only in legends and in the old map drawn by Maya's great-grandfather so many years ago. The beaches were covered with sand that sparkled like gold in the sunlight, and the trees along the shore had leaves of the deepest green that Maya had ever seen in her entire life. Strange and beautiful birds flew above them, calling out in voices that sounded almost like music. And some of these birds had feathers of bright blue and red and yellow that seemed to glow with their own inner light. "This place is amazing," Leo said with his mouth hanging open in wonder as he stared at everything around them with eyes as wide as dinner plates. They found a small bay where the water was calm and shallow, and they guided the sea sparrow carefully through the gentle waves until the bottom of the boat touched the soft sand below. Maya was the first one to jump out of the boat and set foot on the island, and she felt a strange tingling sensation run through her body from her feet all the way up to the top of her head. It was as if the island itself was welcoming her, recognizing her as a member of the family that had discovered this place long before she was even born. Rosa and Leo joined her on the beach, and together they pulled the boat further onto the sand so it would not float away, while they explored this incredible and magical place. "We should find fresh water first," Rosa said, always the practical one who thought about survival before adventure. "And we need to set up a camp before it gets dark." They walked along the beach until they found a small stream of crystal clear water flowing down from the mountains and into the ocean, and they filled their bottles and drank deeply because the storm had used up most of their supplies. The water tasted sweeter and more refreshing than any water Maya had ever tasted before, and it seemed to give her extra energy and strength that she had not felt in days. They set up their camp near the stream under a group of tall trees that provided shade from the hot sun, and Leo built a small fire pit where they could cook their food and keep warm at night. As the sun began to set and the sky turned from blue to orange to purple to black, they sat around the fire and talked about what they would do the next day and where they would start their search for the treasure, according to the map. "The cave is somewhere near the center of the island, at the base of the tallest mountain," Maya said, studying the old paper by the flickering light of the fire. The mountain she was talking about rose up in the middle of the island, like a giant guardian watching over everything below, and even in the darkness, they could see its outline against the stars. "It will take us at least a whole day to reach it," Rosa calculated, using her knowledge of distances and terrain to estimate how long the journey would be. "Maybe longer if the jungle is thick." They agreed to start early the next morning when they were rested and the sun was shining, and they took turns keeping watch through the night just in case there were dangers on this island they did not know about yet. Maya had the last watch of the night, and as she sat by the dying fire and looked up at the stars, she thought about her great-grandfather and wondered what he had felt when he first came to this place. Had he been scared like she was scared? or excited like she was excited, or maybe both feelings mixed together in a way that was hard to describe or understand. She wished she could have met him and asked him all the questions that were filling her mind, but that was impossible now, so she would have to find the answers herself. When the sun rose the next morning and painted the sky with shades of pink and gold, the three adventurers packed their bags with food and water and the tools they might need for the journey ahead. Maya carried the map and the compass. Leo carried a rope and a knife. And Rosa carried a notebook, where she wrote down everything she observed about the island and its strange wonders. They entered the jungle that covered most of the island, and immediately they were surrounded by plants and animals unlike anything they had ever seen or read about in any book. There were flowers that were bigger than their heads, with petals that changed color when you touched them, going from red to blue to green to purple in a beautiful display of natural magic. There were insects with wings that made sounds like tiny bells. And there were lizards that could blend into any surface so perfectly that they seemed to disappear right before your eyes. Leo almost stepped on a snake that was sleeping on the path, but Rosa spotted it just in time and pulled him back before he could disturb the creature that looked like it might be dangerous. "We need to be more careful," Rosa warned. And from that moment on, they moved more slowly and watched every step they took on the jungle floor. After several hours of walking and climbing and pushing through thick bushes and vines, they came to a clearing where something incredible was waiting for them. In the middle of the clearing stood the ruins of an ancient building made of stones that were covered with strange symbols and pictures that told stories they could not understand. "Someone lived here," Maya said in amazement, running her fingers over the carved symbols that felt smooth and cool under her touch. "A long time ago, people lived on this island." Rosa pulled out her notebook and began copying the symbols so she could study them later, while Leo explored the ruins looking for anything that might help them on their quest. Inside one of the crumbling walls, Leo found a small golden medallion that had the same design as the symbol on Maya's map. A circle with a star inside and wavy lines around the edges. "Look at this!" he shouted excitedly, holding up the medallion so his friends could see what he had discovered hidden in the ancient stones. Maya took the medallion and compared it to the symbol on the map, and she was certain now that they were on the right path and that her great-grandfather had found this same place during his own adventure. "The medallion might be a key," Rosa suggested, examining it closely with her sharp eyes that noticed details other people would miss. "Maybe it opens something at the cave." They continued their journey through the jungle with the medallion safely tucked in Maya's pocket. And as the day went on, the terrain became steeper and more difficult to navigate. The mountain rose above them, getting closer with every step they took, and the path became rockier and the plants became thinner as they climbed higher and higher. By the time the sun was directly overhead and beating down on them with intense heat, they were all tired and sweaty, and their legs were aching from the constant climbing. They stopped to rest by a waterfall that cascaded down from a cliff above them, creating a pool of cool water where they could refresh themselves before continuing their journey. "How much further do you think?" Leo asked as he splashed water on his face and neck, trying to cool down his overheated body. Maya looked at the map and then at the mountain above them, calculating the distance in her mind, the way Samuel had taught her to do before they left home. "We should reach the cave before sunset if we keep moving," she answered, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness about what they might find when they finally arrived at their destination. After their rest, they continued climbing up the mountain through a narrow path that wound between huge rocks and over fallen trees that blocked their way. Strange sounds came from the jungle around them, calls and cries from animals they could not see but could definitely hear. And sometimes Maya felt like they were being watched by invisible eyes. "Do not be afraid," she told herself over and over again, remembering her grandmother's words about being brave and about her great-grandfather watching over her from wherever he was now. Finally, just as the sun was beginning to set and the shadows were growing long and dark, they emerged from the jungle and found themselves standing in front of a massive stone cliff. There, carved into the face of the cliff, was the entrance to a cave that was exactly the same shape and size as the drawing on Maya's map, with symbols around the opening that matched the medallion in her pocket. "We found it," Rosa whispered in a voice full of awe and disbelief, as if she had not really believed until this moment that the cave and the island and the treasure were actually real. Maya stepped forward and pulled out the medallion, holding it up to the symbols around the cave entrance. And when the fading sunlight hit the golden surface, something magical happened. The symbols began to glow with a soft blue light that grew brighter and brighter, until the entire entrance was illuminated like it was daytime instead of nearly night. A sound like ancient machinery coming to life echoed from deep within the cave. Gears turning and stones moving and something awakening after centuries of sleep and silence. The three friends looked at each other with fear and excitement in equal measure, knowing that they were about to discover the secret that Maya's great-grandfather had hidden from the world so long ago. "Are you ready?" Maya asked her friends, her voice steady and strong, even though her heart was pounding so hard. She thought it might burst right out of her chest. Leo and Rosa nodded, and together the three brave adventurers walked into the glowing cave entrance and disappeared into the darkness that waited inside, not knowing what they would find but ready to face. The inside of the cave was dark and cool, and the air smelled old and dusty, like nobody had breathed it for hundreds and hundreds of years. Maya held the medallion in front of her like a torch, and the soft blue glow from the symbols near the entrance provided just enough light for them to see a few steps ahead. Leo had brought a small lantern in his pack, and he lit it with trembling hands so they would have more light as they moved deeper into the mysterious cave. Walls of the cave were covered with more symbols and pictures. Beautiful artwork that told the story of the ancient people who had once lived on this island and built this secret place. Rosa studied the pictures as they walked, trying to understand the story they were telling, and she began to piece together bits and pieces of the island's forgotten history. These people were scientists, she said with wonder in her voice, pointing to pictures that show people looking through tubes at the sky and mixing liquids in bowls and drawing maps of the stars. They came to this island a very long time ago to study nature and to learn the secrets of the world. And they discovered something incredible here that they wanted to protect. Maya listened to Rosa's words and felt a deep connection to these ancient scientists who were not so different from herself. Curious people who wanted to understand the world around them. The tunnel went deeper and deeper into the mountain, twisting and turning in ways that made it hard to know which direction they were going or how far they had traveled from the entrance. Sometimes the ceiling was so low they had to bend down and crawl, and sometimes the walls were so narrow they had to squeeze through sideways with their bags scraping against the rough stone. After what felt like hours of walking and crawling and squeezing, they entered a large chamber that made all three of them gasp with amazement and stop in their tracks. The chamber was enormous, bigger than any building Maya had ever seen, with a ceiling so high above them that the lantern light could not reach it, and it disappeared into total darkness. But the most amazing thing was what filled the chamber. Hundreds and hundreds of strange glowing crystals that grew from the floor and the walls, and the ceiling like a frozen forest of light. The crystals came in every color imaginable. Red and blue and green and purple and yellow and orange. And they cast rainbow patterns all around the chamber that danced and swirled like living things. "This is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen," Leo said in a hushed voice, as if speaking too loudly might break the magical spell that seemed to hang in the air. Maya walked slowly among the crystals, touching them gently and feeling a warm energy pulse through them like a heartbeat. And she knew that these were no ordinary stones. "These crystals have power," she said, understanding now why her great-grandfather had wanted to keep this place secret from the world. "They are not just beautiful. They can do something." Rosa was already examining the crystals with her scientific mind, making notes in her notebook and trying to understand what kind of energy they contained and how it worked. "I think these crystals store energy from the sun and the earth and the water," she explained excitedly. "They are like natural batteries that have been charging for thousands of years." Maya remembered what her grandmother had said about the treasure, how it was not gold or silver, but something far more valuable and powerful that could change the world. Now she understood what that meant, and she felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders, like a heavy blanket that she could not shake off. If these crystals could store and release energy, they could be used to power cities and machines and vehicles without burning coal or oil. They could solve so many problems that the world faced. But they could also be used for terrible purposes by people who only cared about money and power, to build weapons and to control others and to cause destruction on a massive scale. Maya understood now why her great-grandfather had kept this secret and had not told anyone about what he had found in this cave at the center of the hidden island. But they had not found the complete treasure yet. Only these crystals, which were amazing, but which Maya sensed were just part of something even bigger and more important. At the far end of the crystal chamber, they found another tunnel that led deeper into the mountain. And Maya knew in her heart that this was where they needed to go next. The tunnel was darker than before because they were now too far from the entrance for the blue glow to reach them. And they had to rely completely on Leo's lantern for light. Strange sounds echoed through the tunnel. Dripping water and creaking stones and other noises that Maya could not identify, but that made the hairs on her arms stand up with fear. "Do not be scared," she whispered to her friends and to herself. "We are almost there. I can feel it." After another long walk through the winding tunnel, they finally reached the end. And what they found there made everything they had seen before seem ordinary by comparison. They stood in a small round chamber with smooth walls that were covered from floor to ceiling with the same symbols they had seen throughout the cave. But here the symbols were made of pure gold. In the center of the chamber was a pedestal made of white stone, and on top of the pedestal sat a crystal unlike any of the others they had seen in the larger chamber. This crystal was clear like glass, but filled with swirling colors that moved and changed constantly. Like a tiny universe was contained inside it, with stars being born and dying and spinning through space around. The crystal were ancient scrolls and books made of strange materials that had somehow survived for centuries without decaying. And Maya knew these contained the knowledge of the people who had created this place. "The treasure," Maya breathed, stepping closer to the pedestal and feeling the energy radiating from the crystal like warmth from a fire. "This is what my great-grandfather found." She reached out her hand to touch the crystal, and the moment her fingers made contact with its surface, something incredible happened that changed everything she thought she knew about herself. A rush of images and feelings flooded into her mind, visions of the past and the future, of the people who had lived on this island and the reason they had created this crystal. She saw them working for years and years, combining the power of many crystals into one perfect crystal that could store all their knowledge and wisdom and discoveries. They had known that one day their civilization would disappear, and they wanted to preserve everything they had learned for future generations who might need it to save themselves and their world. The crystal was not just a source of energy. It was a library containing solutions to problems that humanity had not even encountered yet, answers to questions that had not been asked. When Maya pulled her hand away from the crystal, she was breathing hard and her eyes were filled with tears of wonder and understanding and a sense of purpose. she had never felt before. "What did you see?" Rosa asked with concern, putting her hand on Maya's shoulder to steady her friend who looked like she might fall over at any moment. Maya told them everything she had experienced, the visions and the knowledge and the purpose of the ancient people who had dedicated their lives to creating this gift for the future. Leo and Rosa listened with amazement, struggling to understand and believe what Maya was telling them, but trusting her completely because they had been through so much together. "So, what do we do now?" Leo asked the question that was on everyone's mind, the question that would determine what happened next to them and to this incredible discovery. Maya looked at the crystal and then at her friends, and then at the golden symbols on the HFY walls that seemed to be watching them and waiting for their decision. She thought about her great-grandfather and the choice he had made to keep this place secret. And she thought about the world outside this cave, with all its problems and all its potential. She thought about greedy people who would use this power for themselves, and kind people who would use it to help others. And she knew that the future depended on who discovered this place first. "We need to think carefully about this," Maya said, with a wisdom that seemed beyond her 12 years. "This is too important to decide quickly, or without considering all the possibilities." Rosa agreed and suggested they take some of the scrolls and books so they could study them and understand more about the crystal and its powers before making any decisions. They carefully gathered some of the ancient texts, handling them with great respect and care, because they knew these documents were priceless treasures that could never be replaced. Maya took one last look at the crystal on the pedestal, silently promising to return and to use its power wisely when the time was right, whenever that might be. They began the long journey back through the tunnels, past the glowing crystal forest and through the narrow passages and up toward the entrance, where the night sky waited for them when they finally emerged from the cave. The moon was high above the island, and the stars were shining brighter than Maya had ever seen them shine before. They were tired and overwhelmed and changed forever by what they had experienced inside the mountain. But they were also filled with hope and determination to do the right thing with the knowledge they now carried. "We should rest here tonight and start back to the boat in the morning," Rosa suggested. And everyone agreed because they were too exhausted to walk another step. They made a small camp near the cave entrance and sat together looking up at the stars. The next morning, the three adventurers woke up as the sun rose over the mountain and flooded the world with golden light that made everything look fresh and new. Maya felt different than she had felt before entering the cave, as if the knowledge she had received from the crystal had changed something deep inside her that she could not quite explain. They gathered their belongings and the ancient scrolls they had taken from the chamber, making sure everything was safely packed before beginning the long journey back through the jungle to their boat. The journey down the mountain was easier than the climb up had been, and they moved quickly through the jungle paths they had already traveled, recognizing landmarks along the way. By the time the sun was setting, they had reached the beach where the sea sparrow was waiting for them just as they had left it, safe and ready to carry them home. "I cannot believe we actually did it," Leo said with a huge smile on his face as they loaded their supplies and the precious scrolls onto the boat. "We found the hidden island and the treasure." Rosa was already reading one of the scrolls, trying to decode the ancient symbols with the help of the notes she had made during their exploration of the ruins and the cave. "This language is similar to some ancient languages I have read about in books," she said excitedly. "I think I can learn to translate it with enough time and study." Maya sat on the sand and looked back at the island that had changed her life forever, feeling grateful and sad at the same time because she knew she might never return to this magical place. She thought about all the wonders she had seen, the glowing plants and colorful birds and crystal forests and ancient ruins, and she knew she would remember them for as long as she lived. Before they left, Maya took a small piece of one of the glowing crystals she had brought from the cave and buried it in the sand near their campsite. It was her way of marking this place and making a connection between herself and the island, a promise that she would honor the trust the ancient scientists had placed in whoever found their treasure. As darkness fell over the beach, they decided to spend one more night on the island and set sail at dawn when they could see clearly and navigate safely across the ocean. They built a fire on the beach and cooked the last of their food while talking about everything they had experienced and everything they had learned during this incredible adventure. Maya told her friends about her plan for what to do with the knowledge they had discovered, a plan that she had been thinking about ever since she touched the crystal and received its visions. "We cannot tell anyone about this place yet," she said seriously, looking at both of her friends to make sure they understood how important this was. "The world is not ready for this kind of power." Leo and Rosa nodded in agreement because they had come to the same conclusion themselves after seeing what the crystal could do and imagining what might happen if the wrong people found out about it. "But we cannot keep it secret forever," Rosa added thoughtfully. "The ancients wanted this knowledge to be used to help people, so eventually it has to be shared with the world." Maya agreed and explained the rest of her plan, which involved studying the scrolls and learning everything they could about the crystals and their powers before deciding when and how to reveal the truth. "We will become like the ancient scientists," she said with determination in her voice. "We will learn and study and prepare until we are ready to share this gift with humanity in a way that will help and not harm." They made a pact that night on the beach of the hidden island, promising each other that they would keep the secret and work together to fulfill the purpose the ancients had intended for their creation. They promised to study hard and become wise and wait for the right moment when the world had grown ready to receive such powerful knowledge. Without using it for destruction, it was a heavy responsibility for three young people to carry. But Maya knew they were not ordinary children anymore after what they had seen and experienced on this adventure. The next morning, they pushed the sea sparrow into the water and raised the sail to catch the wind that would carry them back across the ocean to their home village. The journey home was much easier than the journey out had been, with calm seas and steady winds and clear skies that seemed to celebrate their safe return from the hidden island. Maya spent the days on the boat reading the scrolls with Rosa and practicing the navigation skills Samuel had taught them and thinking about the future that lay ahead. After several days of sailing, they finally saw the familiar coastline of their home village appear on the horizon, and Maya felt tears of joy filling her eyes at the sight of this place she loved. Samuel was waiting for them at the lighthouse, waving his arms above his head as they sailed into the harbor, and his face was filled with relief and happiness when he saw they were safe. "You found it, did you not?" the old sailor asked as he helped them tie up the boat and carry their things onto the dock, his eyes twinkling with excitement and curiosity. Maya hugged Samuel tightly and thanked him for everything he had done to help them prepare for this journey. And then she told him about what they had discovered. On the hidden island, Samuel listened with wonder and nodded his head slowly when she explained their decision to keep the secret until the world was ready for such powerful knowledge. "Your great-grandfather would be very proud of you," he said with emotion in his voice, putting his weathered hand on Maya's shoulder. "You have shown wisdom beyond your years." Maya's grandmother was waiting at their house when Maya finally arrived home, and the old woman cried with joy and relief when she saw her granddaughter safe and healthy. Maya told her grandmother everything about the adventure, about the storm and the island and the crystals and the ancient treasure. And her grandmother listened without saying a word when Maya finished her story. Her grandmother took out a small wooden box that Maya had never seen before and handed it to her with trembling hands. Inside the box was a letter written by her great-grandfather, a letter he had left behind for whoever in his family might one day follow in his footsteps, and discover the hidden island. The letter explained that he had always hoped someone would continue his work and learn the secrets of the ancients, and that he trusted them to use the knowledge wisely. Maya read the letter 3 times, memorizing every word, and she felt closer to her great-grandfather in that moment than she ever had before, even though she had never met him. The years that followed were busy years for Maya, Rosa, and Leo as they grew up and studied and learned and prepared for the day when they would share the secret with the world. Rosa became a brilliant scientist who studied ancient languages and chemistry and physics, translating the scrolls and understanding more about the crystal technology. Every year, Leo became an engineer who designed and built machines that could use the crystal energy safely and efficiently, working in secret with materials they brought back from additional trips to the island. Maya became a leader who traveled around the world, learning about different cultures and governments and trying to understand when humanity might be ready for the gift they were protecting. They never forgot their promise to each other and to the ancient scientists who had entrusted them with such an important responsibility. And they never gave up hope that one day the time would be right. And finally, many years later, when they were adults with families and careers and wisdom earned through experience, they decided that the moment had come to reveal the truth. The world had changed during those years, and people had begun to understand the importance of working together and protecting the planet and using technology for good instead of evil. Maya stood before the leaders of the world and told them the story of the hidden island and the ancient treasure and the crystal that could provide clean energy for all of humanity. She showed them the scrolls and the translations and the machines that Leo had built. And she explained how this technology could solve so many of the problems that the world faced. There were some who wanted to use the power for selfish purposes, but they were outnumbered by those who understood the importance of sharing this gift fairly with everyone on Earth. A new era began that day, an era of clean energy and scientific cooperation and hope for the future. All because 3 brave children had found an old map in a dusty storage room. Maya often thought about that day when she was helping her grandmother clean and found the treasure that started it all. And she smiled knowing that everything had happened exactly as it was meant to. She never stopped being curious and brave and wise. And she taught her own children and grandchildren about the importance of adventure and discovery and keeping promises. The hidden island became a place of learning and research, where scientists from all over the world came to study the crystals and the ancient knowledge, always honoring the people who had created it. And sometimes, when the moon was full and the stars were bright, Maya would sail out to the island on a boat, just like the sea sparrow, and sit on the beach, remembering the adventure that changed her life. She would think about Leo and Rosa and Samuel and her grandmother and her great-grandfather, all the people who had been part of this incredible journey that started with a question and ended with a gift to humanity, and she would feel grateful for every moment, every challenge, every discovery, every friend,